Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, question for you, sir.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Do what you're doing. So you look like you were trying to get something done real quick.
No, no worries. I'm listening.
Question is there any access to the mic feeds?
Those mics?
Yeah. So when folks are talking into mics, is there any output that the cameras can plug in to pick up the mics, or no, just got to catch it out of the air?
I'm just capturing the one.
Okay. Whoever has the
Congresswoman from Atlanta, who is a member of the U.S. Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. And also, as we wait to set up our dais, we will be introducing every one of us. But she has to also leave for an important engagement. So, attention to another important topic, addressing the mental health crisis in our nation and preventing suicides in our nation, specifically as it relates to Black men and boys. And Mr. Danny Davis and I have been on this mission for years, and so has Miss Lucy McBeth, who was her son. Danny and I were founding members of the Caucus on Black men and boys. The suicide rate of Black men and boys has increased 160% over the past 3 decades, and young Black men are at the heart of this. So it's the younger generation that's taking a gun and taking their lives. So I refuse to let this go unnoticed, and I thank these amazing leaders, all of you, for coming here to educate Congress about what we can do to change this tragic course. I'm going to now ask that each of you have the opportunity to introduce yourselves. See, I'm not supposed to be the MC. Let me start with Mr. Marcus Smith. Mr. Marcus Smith is going to open up with remarks focusing on his lived experience as a patient. Marcus, welcome to Congress.
Thank you guys for having me. I want to say thank you to Congresswoman Frederica. I wanted to say thank you to Congresswoman Frederica.
Is your mic on?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Just use your ears.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you to Congresswoman Frederica and Congresswoman Ms. Wilson for allowing this opportunity for us to be able to speak in front of you today. I'm Marcus Smith II, former 6-year NFL veteran, played with the Eagles, I played with the Seahawks, I played with the Commanders. I'm now CEO of the Circle of Them, which is a non-profit organization where we unmask the feelings that cause anxiety and depression. So my journey started when I was 8 years old, right? When I was 8, I had my first anxiety attack. And nobody in my community, my mother, my father, no one really understood what that really meant. They even put a blood pressure cuff on me to try to see what it was. So we really didn't have the understanding or the knowledge about what mental health was. And that kind of carried me all the way into high school. I was dealing with that in high school as well. I was dealing with it so much so that it took me all the way into the NFL. And then I contemplated suicide for myself, right? This is a sport, a barbaric sport that we live in today that is very barbaric, and we don't speak about mental health and what it does to us, especially as Black men. And just to be able to have the representation of everyone on here that is African American, that is what I would have wanted to see when I was younger, being able to speak up. And so, if I left you guys with anything, or what I want you guys to understand, I want you guys to know that the people who are listening, the more that you speak, the more that you free yourself. And so, the more that I tapped into therapy, the more that I spoke, I freed myself each and every day about the things that I was dealing with as far as anxiety and depression. And so that's what I would want to leave you guys with today, and understanding that mental health is a journey, and it is a success. I mean, it is a portion of what we are and who we are, but we have to speak about it in order to free ourselves.
afternoon, Congresswoman Wilson and Congressman Bass. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here with a wonderful gift for my father. His birthday was yesterday. It'll be 2 years in August 10th that he passed. Known to me as Ronald Devon, known to the world as a prodigy cellist, composer, do what I do. But just simply again, it's my father who most of his whole life battled schizophrenia. Over a period of time, I became one of his primary caregivers, along with my wonderful family members. That sticks out in particular, my cousin Tracy in Cleveland, Ohio, and through his process and through his journey up until the time he took his last breath, it gave me a clear understanding of not only how mental health can affect the individual, but also the family members, and their gift, their talent, and all the things. Being able to identify when somebody's having a crisis, there have been times when my father was lost in the street for weeks at a time, where that can be displaced. Some refer to some of those individuals as homeless, forgotten about, where, and in cases where where 911 is called, we have to make sure that there's policies put in place as a business part of the term. Walter put it, you don't send a painter to do a plumbing job. You know what I mean? So I'm here to advocate in hopes that we see more funding, policies and whatnot going into community, for our community too, and just break down the stigmatization of talking about mental health in the community. It's not something, in some cases, some people need therapy. They need a village to be able to depend on. They need medication. It's not something you can necessarily pray away. You know what I mean? So I'm here hoping that we continue to bridge the gap as public figures, whether you're an NFL player or a singer, or you don't have to be Devon to care about community and to care about the mental health of our young men, our women, and the things that are affecting us in the community. So again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. And now, we will transition to our chair, and as we're doing so, I'm going to ask each of you to give us an introduction of yourselves.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you for your incredible leadership that brought us to this point. It's because of your vision and your leadership that we are here to talk about such an impactful and important issue, our young people, and to the incredible CEOs and leaders that we have in front of us. I know you've been thanked, but we can never thank you enough for your incredible contribution, not just when the lights are on, but when they are at the darkest times of our lives. Your expertise, your care makes a difference. And so we're here today, along with our illustrious leader, to lend our voice, our power of the Congressional Black Caucus, individually and collectively, to this critical issue, a time that is so desperate that it requires all hands on deck. So with that, I would ask that, beginning with Brother Smith, you introduce yourself and then everyone will follow alongside.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you again. I'm Marcus Smith II. I'm a former 6-year NFL veteran, played with Command, Seahawks, and Eagles.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Anthony Street, the Chief Executive Officer for the National Association of Social Workers.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Wilson, the CEO of the National Alliance on Mental Illness Now.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Arthur Evans. I am the CEO and Chief Executive Vice President of the American Psychological Association, which is the largest organization representing
Moyne, CEO of the American Counseling Association, also known as ACA. Our association is the largest in the world, supporting the needs of professional counselors, counselors in training, and the thousands of clients that we serve every day.
Hi, I'm Dr. George Goodman. I'm the Executive Director of the American Public Health Association here in Washington, D.C. Let me say hi to Congressman Davis, who's I grew up in Chicago, known him for years, I just have to say hi.
As a reminder, the microphones in front of you have a button. If you make sure you press it when it's red, it's on. If you don't want to get caught on mic, press it so it's not red. We only want to hear what you want us to hear. With that, thank you all for being here. Listen, we have a relatively short amount of time given the magnitude of where we are. We know that our young people, particularly in the immediate aftermath of COVID, were in effect subject to what hardened criminals are subject to in solitary confinement. Children are left alone in isolation without having access to their peers, their friends, their normal activities. And unfortunately, many were left with the only company of social media. And we know social media paints a picture that everyone's life is perfect. With filters that make us look our best, with pictures that imply our relationships are perfect, that implies that everything is perfect in our lives. And our young people are left to look at that and then wonder, well, what's wrong with me? And we've adopted the mantra, it's okay to not be okay sometimes. It's okay to feel sad or to have anxiety or to have depression. It's not okay to not treat it. When we have high blood pressure, diabetes, or any other ailment, we take medicine, we exercise, we adjust our diets. But with with mental health, we tend to think if we stick our head in the sand, it goes away. Well, it doesn't. And a part of that is the stigma in our community that somehow, if something's wrong, then you're crazy. And that isn't the case. We know that's not the case. So part of our discussion and a part of our angle is to consistently to normalize, or at least make plain that it's okay. You know, when I was a kid, my grandmother would say, "Are you okay, Troy? Are you feeling blue?" I don't know if people even use that terminology anymore, but if you made blue, man, like kind of sad. Are you down? Now we ask our kids, "Have you done your homework? Are you hungry? What happened at school?" But we don't ask them about their mental health anymore, and we have to get back to that. So as we take advantage of the expertise that you all bring, and we look to our young people with great hope, inspiration, aspiration, and care, because you are the best and the brightest, and I don't care what you're going through, you'll overcome it. And we're here for you, and there are resources available for you, so you know that you are not alone. In your darkest hour, you are not alone. This Congress is fully funded 988, a 24-hour man number that a person can call 24 hours a day. No one will ask your name. No one will ask where you live. No one will trace your number. If you don't want us to know, we won't know, but we will be available to provide resources at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Someone's there to listen and to help, and it's completely anonymous. You gotta take advantage of it. So, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for stepping up. This is an ongoing, we'll continue to work with fraternities, sororities, organizations such as yours, individuals, churches, nonprofits, to make sure that we're constantly feeding and bringing these resources to bear. So let me ask Dr. Gillison, Ms. Gillison, who I've had the opportunity to work with quite a bit, and we kind of bumped heads, if you will, in the best possible way as we navigate through this water of mental health and mental health awareness and providing resources. Share with me, as we talk about the issues that I just mentioned, social media. What role does social media play in the aftermath of COVID and other isolating instances that impact our children, how we might be able to address that.
Congressman Carter, so good to see you and the esteemed congressmen and women here today. Thank you. And yes, we have connected, and it's so good to see you. Social media, during COVID, it was the only community that young people had. And in it being the only community that they had, there were, our young people were living with fear, uncertainty, and doubt during that time. The fear of what COVID would mean in terms of their journey through their communities, in terms of school, the uncertainty of what the future would look like, and the doubt of what they would actually be able to accomplish for something they had never experienced before. Social media is very tough on our young people. The peer pressure that exists from it is something that is difficult for young people to navigate from the standpoint of how to not respond to it, not to actually let it take them down, and to actually look at how they can use social media as an asset, but looking at it from the standpoint of the upside of it versus the peer pressure and the negative connotations and some of the things that go with it from the standpoint of how young people are using it. So there is an incredible ripple effect that we have almost a tsunami of trauma of young people coming out of COVID with social media, and we have to address it.
Thank you very much. And before I do that, I was not aware that the members had not introduced themselves and given your statement. So I'm going to start with Representative Danny Davis, if you would, Congressman.
Well, thank you very much, and let me just say quickly that I want to commend Representative Wilson because of all the members of Congress that I've known during the time that I have been here. Nobody has put as much effort, as much energy, and much attention to focusing on African American males as she has. And that's what caught my attention and why I decided to come and spend time seeing all of you. I've been a member of most of the organizations represented at the table. It just happens that I am a psychologist by training, and so this issue is a major one. And I've always maintained that we've never spent as much attention, we've never put as much resource towards it, and we've never spent the time. So it's just a pleasure to see as many African American males in a room here at one time, which is something we don't often see. So thank you, Representative Wilson, for your leadership, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Representative Davis, and someone that certainly does not need introduction, Chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, the Honorable Stephen Horsford.
Thank you, Congressman Carter. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Horsford. I serve Nevada's 4th Congressional District in Las Vegas in central rural Nevada, and currently serve as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. I want to thank Representative Wilson first and foremost for your leadership as the founder and chair for the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, and the tremendous care and attention and intentionality that you bring every meeting to uplifting the issues that impact Black men and boys. To my colleagues who are here today, thank you for taking the time. I don't want to spend too much time other than to say to the Black young men who are here, you deserve to be here. We love you. We want you to be successful. And as members of Congress, it's our duty to represent you and other young boys like you, young boys and men like you all over the country. Unfortunately, too many systems and institutions that work with Black boys and men have failed you. They failed you because you don't deserve to be treated any differently than any other group. But we know that whether it's in education, in employment, in dealing with the criminal justice system, in every instance, we have been treated differently, and you have been treated differently. And so today I know the focus is on the mental health, and I actually want to make sure that we focus on the mental wellness. Everybody can use a little bit of mental wellness. This place is kind of crazy when we deal with Congress and some of the colleagues that we have to deal with. This is a very confrontational workplace for some of us. But we really need to understand, and maybe for the panelists, what mental wellness looks like, how people can be equipped with the resiliency and the tools to cope in any environment that they're in. I would like to understand the disparate impact of suicide on Black men and boys, which is now 100% rise in the last 30 years. I also want to know about the lack of representation of Black men in psychiatric care. The fact that many times when we seek out care, we seek it out from people who look like us, and so where is that in the pipeline, and what can we be doing as members of Congress to improve that? And I also want the young men in here to know that as the Congressional Black Caucus, not only are we working to try to improve access to mental wellness and health, but we're also working to improve the economic conditions of the Black community in every respect, so that we have the same life chances to succeed in business, in the workforce, in home ownership, and all the things that help build up a community, so that we have the same access to that economic opportunity and that we're not denied. Because we know when we improve the economic conditions of people, Black America, we actually improve their health outcomes and save Black lives. So again, I want to commend Representative Wilson for your tremendous leadership and the work that the commission has done and has been doing on behalf of the community. Look forward to hearing more from our witnesses and learning more about what we can do collectively here in Congress to advance your recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And next we'll hear from Lucy McBath, the Honorable Colin Representative.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our esteemed leader and Chairwoman Frederica Wilson and her staff. Thank you all so much for convening this really important discussion today. And I want to thank you to our witnesses. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with us and to enlighten us as well as to how we can work to help support you and to help support young Black men and boys across the country. And as a mother to a young Black man whose life was taken to gun violence, the health and safety of our young Black men and boys is extremely critical and important to me. And today our community continues to face mental health crises. And I think we've continued to see this even become more exacerbated because of COVID, coming through COVID. COVID has really ripped off the Band-Aid and began to really show specifically across the nation, but especially in our communities of color, the crisis that we are facing with young Black men and boys. And they, of course, are the fastest growing demographic in the country and this nation that are suffering by mental health. And so this is heartbreaking and definitely unacceptable. Suicide rates have increased across our country in the last 2 years. More than half of the rates of death that we've seen, suicide by firearm, a lot of that has also been disproportionately in our community and by Black men and boys. The Black community suicide by firearm rate has increased almost half. Unacceptable. Mental health is as important as our physical health, just as important as your physical health. And we must invest in that. That means that our responsibility and our accountability to you, black men and boys, is to find the resources and the means to invest in you, your physical health and your mental health and well-being. Investing the resources means that we are investing in you as human beings, and you deserve that. You deserve that from your community, and you deserve that from this nation. So to the witnesses, I'd like to thank you all so very much for being here. I myself am convening my own panel at 3, and I will have to leave, but I'm really grateful that you've taken the time and the energy to come and to really help support our community, our black men and boys. They're looking to you. They're looking to your leadership, and I know that you will not fail.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, intentionally save the best for last. Someone that you've heard all of us talk about the incredible accolades of her incredible leadership, not just now, but through the founding of the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. It was her leadership. It was her tenacious pushing that got this over the goalposts. And it's because of her that we're all here. And I am grateful that she's allowed me to play this role and to share this moment to talk about something as critical and as important as mental health for our young people, and also in every possible aspect of your health. Join me in giving a big, big, big round of applause to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson.
Thank you so much. So with that, I have a few questions to our panel. Dr. Street, in 1999, Surgeon General David Satcher issued his call to action to prevent suicide, which emphasized suicide as a serious public health problem requiring attention and action. Historically, suicide has not been viewed as a problem specific to the black community, but black men and boys are still suffering in silence, and black boys specifically are dying. Will the social work community support public health initiatives that center the experiences of black men and boys?
Thank you so much for that question, Congresswoman. Absolutely. I am the Chief Executive Officer for the National Association of Social Workers, but I'm also a father, I'm also a son, I'm an uncle, and this is something that deeply impacts me and my family, and so for me, I have the ability to kind of lead the profession around these priorities, and so this is a priority for social work. We're one of the largest providers of behavioral services in the United States, and so we stand always ready to address the needs and the treatment and prevention of black men and boys in the United States, and really work on ways to elevate this work and elevate the collaboration. So you all being up here, this is not our first time meeting or connecting, but we are all ready to work on this and come up with some creative solutions to address this across the country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Evans. Dr. Street. Now, my next question is for Dr. Evans. It is a pleasure to have you here. 10 years from now, what would success look like with respect to black men and boys' mental health? And please help us as members of Congress. How do we get there?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for your work and attention to this issue long before it was popular, as you noted in your opening comments. I think it was interesting listening to the opening comments because many of you said a lot of the things that I would say. And I want to just point out a couple of those. If I'm thinking 10 years out, what would I want to see? First of all, I would want to see that we have made the conceptual shift to think about mental health, not from an emphasis or from a pathology standpoint, to see it as mental wellness. That is our goal as a community, that everyone in the community is mentally well. would hope that we will have made some significant improvements and progress on the disproportionate number of African-American men and boys who find themselves, when they need help, in inappropriate places. Meaning the criminal justice system for men, the juvenile justice system for young boys, for adolescents. Disproportionately, the young adolescent African-American boys who are in juvenile justice have mental health challenges as opposed to having more criminal kinds of behavior. And I would hope that we would see that when people needed help, they could get the help that they needed on demand. So if we could do those things, I think we can make a lot of progress. And I think one other thing that I would add to that, we have to innovate in terms of how we address these issues. One of the challenges that we find in terms of the services that people get, they're not always the most effective services, and there's a lot that we can do to make those services much more effective.
Thank you so much. I need it back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congressman Horton. And I would ask members that we're gonna set the clock for 5 minutes. We'll be generous, but just in an effort to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions and we have time to hear from all of you. And we try our best to kind of make your answers concise and be considerate of that we maximize our time with you.
Thank you. So if you could elaborate on the question around when Black men seek psychiatric care, they are more often prefer to see someone from the same race health professional, which are vastly underrepresented. Have you seen models for bringing people into the profession, retaining those who are in the profession? I would imagine there's self-care issues that have to be addressed within the profession to help people balance dealing with what they're also trying to help others with. You know, Congressman Danny Davis, as the ranking and chair of the subcommittee on children and families and the Ways and Means Committee, has done a lot around kind of the health professions and grants that provide opportunities to people within the profession to kind of move up from one position to another. So can you speak to what models are working? And again, where can we as members of Congress be more supportive and making a bigger impact? Anyone who wants to answer this?
Sure, thank you for the question. And so there are several models out there that really look at enhancing the workforce. I think here in DC, there was certainly a model where the DC Council just passed legislation that provides for behavioral access degrees. So a person can enroll at the UDC to get a free master's degree, which helps to increase that pathway for behavioral health and the services. But if you think about it as well, it's also really thinking about when people enter the workforce, how do we retain them? And part of that, so social work is the largest provider of behavioral services. And when you think about clinical social work in the reimbursement, we really have to do something around what reimbursement rates look like, as well as ensuring that social workers get 100% of the physician fee scale. And so social workers want to come in, they want to do the work, but they also want to make sure that they're able to retain that work by making sure that they have fair and equal access to that payment. On the other end of that is really thinking about how do we encourage people in the workforce, right? And so I'll use an example of myself. When I became a social worker, I didn't hear about social work until undergrad. And so we have to work at helping people understand the pathway to behavioral health and these professions that work in behavioral health a lot sooner. So when you look at the STEMS profession, they start in grades 2 and 3. So we have to move that bar down so that people are hearing about mental health, hearing about pathways to this profession, and really starting that workforce at a much younger, earlier time, so that when they get to undergrad, they know what they want to do and kind of move there. And then lastly, I would say that one of the biggest things that Congress can do is really look at this idea of, or really look at the area of public loans, of public service loan forgiveness. One of the biggest barriers in social work and other mental health professions is that you have to take out large loans to finish school, and then when you come out, the pay and the salary to effectuate that degree is not equal to what we see out to get there. So public first loan forgiveness, and then really thinking about how to increase that pathway through education. Thank you.
Mr. Devon and Mr. Smith, I wanted to ask about the role that, you know, celebrities, entertainers, athletes can play in helping to demystify and take away the stigma of accessing mental health and mental wellness support. What are some ideas or suggestions that you have, particularly with the Congressional Black Caucus, on ways to do that effectively, and particularly with your platform, how have you helped to make this issue something that people can relate to and understand?
I would say for myself, being a songwriter, being, a producer, being able to use my songwriting skill set, records that I've written in the past. I think was probably one of my more popular records, Bulletproof, which featured Ludacris, from the Love War Masterpiece album, which was a record that, spoke about social injustice. It was a record that spoke about, everything, the climate that was going on, from us being in a war to, mental health, HIV and AIDS, just different things, right? It's really about using the platform. For me as an artist, I found a way to bridge the gap in what we call edutainment, being able to entertain but also educate. For example, we just did an 18-city tour with a huge partnership that I have with Gilead Sciences, totally different initiative, addressing HIV and AIDS and how it's affecting.
I just met with them this morning.
Focus
program.
Yeah, Focus program, spending over $12 million in grants and funding to advocate and make it known how, it's affecting Black women in particular. They make up 14% of the population, with more than half of the cases for women here in the States. So that's an example of, being able to connect, entertain, but also, bring awareness to the issue. Mental health is another huge initiative for me as well. So I'm looking to partner with organizations here locally on the ground, connecting with my brothers here on the panel. And, I think there's a great way to connect, and engage, and hopefully having my peers, follow suit as well. Whether you're talking soul, R&B, hip hop community and rappers for our young brothers who they can connect with initially, I think, for us as men, we taught to not cry and just different things, just be able to connect. I think therapy is a very important thing too. I waited to get in my 40s to start having a therapist. It took for me the passing of my dad to unpack and understand the direct connection of so many things that were aligned in my life and how it affected me. So encouraging that our young brothers in the community can have therapy and be able to train the individuals that they come in contact with the most, the barbers in the barbershops. You know what I mean? For our sisters in the beauty salons, I think thinking outside the box.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Smith, and yield back.
Yeah, I would say that we are a voice. We are a voice, and being an athlete, kids tend to look up to athletes, right? And we continue to be a voice and being able to speak about mental health and mental wellness and what that looks like. What we have done, and I've been able to partner with Dan and being able to partner with NAMI to be able to create healing circles, to be able to help create a bridge for these kids to be able to get the healing that they desire, right? You get that type of healing and you get the knowledge from that, and we go through lived experience. So being able to do that and being able to push them to that, because they may not understand or know about what is going on in the community and what's going on with mental health. So, I feel like that being an athlete and being a voice and being able to speak about it, so much so that they see me on a platform speaking and being very vulnerable about where I am and what I've been through, would kind of change their perspective of what mental health is, and it will cause them to speak up about what they're seeing in the community
and want to go to a resource like NAMI, right? And want to talk about that, but getting in the actual community, where I think could push them forward would be a healing circle and them understanding what is all out there for them. And being able to talk about lived experience, because once you see somebody that looks like you and they'll understand that, hey, I'm no different than him, then they'll be more inclined to speak up and speak out.
Thank you very much, Congressman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Georges, you are a public health specialist, and oftentimes when we think of being healthy, it has to do with how long you live, how free you might be of illness, sickness, or morbidity. And then there's a component called social role expectation, that there are things that people are expected to do if they're healthy. For example, voting is one of the things that healthy people in this country are expected to do. Why do you think so many people don't vote? You know, we see an election and we'll say 30% voted. What about the other 70% who did not? And that's a social role expectation, or even obligation.
You know, one of the things that, as you know, I'm an emergency doc, and one of the things that I learned early on, that 80% will make you healthy further outside the doctor's office. Voting is absolutely a social determinant. And I think there's a hopelessness and helplessness that people have, that they can't do anything, it doesn't matter, their voice doesn't matter. As I look around this room, let me just say something that I think is obvious, that maybe hasn't been said yet, particularly because we have so many young people in the room. When I was the health commissioner here in DC, I spent a lot of time over in Ward 7 and 8 trying to deal with this issue of hopelessness and helplessness among young folks of color who just didn't feel they would live long enough to, you know, to be successful, long enough to really do anything with their lives. And what I'm going to say today is, look at who's at this table. These aren't just black men at this table. These folks are in charge. So for these young folks, as you see, members of Congress, folks that have been successful, that they can't succeed. So this hopelessness and helplessness, they should just throw that away. And that means that they should speak up, they should engage in their communities, they need to vote. Absolutely need to vote. And they need to take charge, because we are in charge. And we need to pretend, you know, we need to act as though we're in charge. And so I think that's important. If we do that, then the things that we need to make our society better, engagement in, you know, better economics, engagement in better education, dealing with some of the violence that's in our community. If we deal with those things, I believe that we can address them in a positive way.
I also believe that parenting has a great deal of impact on who we become, how we become, and what we become. And I also believe that we are missing the boat a bit relative to what parents are taught to teach. And if parenting is improved, I'm always trying to get some grant money or something available. Parenting programs. How much of an impact do you think parenting has on our overall community as we grow in the health?
I 100% agree with you, Congressman. I was fortunate to have two parents who told me I could do anything that I wanted to do, who supported everything that I could do. And when I've had challenges, and when I try to support people that have been challenged, I've discovered that in many cases they did not have that guidance from some of them. It may have been a parent, it may have been a grandparent, it may have been a cousin, but somebody lawfully favored or unlawfully favored for that individual, so it's absolutely essential. By the way, our communities can serve that purpose as well.
It seems to me that we don't tackle the role of two-parent families. I know that in my community, in my congressional district, 38% of the young people live with someone other than their natural parents. And I always say these individuals, in many instances, start off behind, way behind others, just merely the fact that they don't have the stability and the guidance of two adult parents on an ongoing basis in their lives.
All I can say is that in my life, that support from both parents is absolutely essential for me. And by the way, I wanna, celebrate those folks that don't have two parents in their life. Because that one parent can, carry a heavy load. But to the extent that we can build up rental skills, none of us are born with the knowledge to raise families. I raised 2 daughters, and I got 3 grandkids, and all of us who have done it know it's tough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce, and I'll come back to him in a moment, but we've been joined by my dear colleague, Congressman Hank Johnson, who will introduce himself in a second, and we'll turn over questions. But before that, I want to just touch on a couple of points. One that was made by Chairman Horsley before he had to leave, when we talked about the necessity of having more African American service providers. And to that extent, I have introduced, and everyone on this panel has co-sponsored, the Mental Health Workforce Act, which will do exactly what we're talking about. You mentioned the challenges of being able to pay your student loans and the return on investment, the whole 9 yards, but we want to make it easier. With the Mental Health Workforce Act, if passed, and we pray that it will provide the resources to encourage more African Americans to become social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and to have debt forgiveness as a result of that. To encourage that people have people that they can see, that look like them, that understand their life experience, that they have a level of trust because of that life experience. Doesn't mean that others cannot provide the resource, but we know empirically that people are more comfortable with people that they're comfortable with. And so having more African Americans, male, female, and the like, to come into this space is certainly a goal that we have. And if you haven't seen a copy, we'll make sure that you get it, with hopes that your individual and collective organizations will sign on and become supporters of the Mental Health Workforce Act, one that we believe will make a significant difference in our communities. And one other comment, I want to just kind of go back to something that Brother Benjamin said, and I'm going to take a little bit of editorial privilege here, if you will, and say optimal, not essential. Because a lot of us grew up in single-family households, where a mother played the role of mother and father. And so I don't want any young kid out there to think if your mother and father are not in the house, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not optimal. Ideally, we'd like, just as Brother Benjamin said, optimally, we want both parents to be able to weigh in, be it in the household or not, to play a role in guiding and nurturing our young people. But I will tell you, my mother and father divorced when we were very young. My father didn't play a significant role in our lives, but my mother served as a mother and father. She was a disciplinarian. She was a provider. She was an educator. She was a friend. And so, for those of you who may be out there in the audience or watching, listen, doesn't matter what hand you dealt, doesn't matter what your circumstances are. Here I am, a member of Congress, who was raised by a mother, a strong black woman, 6 siblings, and praise be to God and the prayers and blessings of God and the energy and tenacity of my mom. all of our children are successful. 5 of which are black men. 5 of which are black men. So know this, if I can do it, if we can do it, you can too. And it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, it doesn't matter what your home life looks like, doesn't matter what someone said about you, doesn't matter what grade you made yesterday, doesn't matter what friends you have, doesn't matter how much money you, your mom, or your grandmother has. You can reach your God-given talent, regardless of the obstacles that are there. And I know Brother Benjamin did not mean that, so I'm not picking on him. I'm just, because I don't want anybody else to misunderstood. I knew exactly what he was saying, but I want everybody else to hear. Optimal, not essential. Essential for Brother Benjamin is what he said, in all fairness. But I don't want anybody to misconstrue that. We all have different formulas for success. We all have different hands that we have to play. But know that the reason we're here today is to make sure that every single hand dealt will be a winning hand. And we together can make that happen. So I want to ask Dr. CEO Dan Gillison with NAMI a question. Only 1 in 3 black adults with a mental health condition receives care in our country. We often see them acting this out on a street corner, shadowboxing, talking to themselves, walking around with a grocery cart. And the inclination for some is to say, lazy bum, get a job. I'm not gonna give you any money, you're just gonna go get some crack or buy some wine. Well, the reality is, these are many of these, if not all, are undiagnosed cases. And unfortunately, people are human and they do what we do. And that is, you seek to sometimes self-medicate. And sometimes that's with a bottle of wine, sometimes it's with a joint, sometimes a hit on the crack pipe. But we should get away from the thought that you lazy bum, you get a job, you drug addict, and recognize that these are the pictures and the faces of mental health. And but for the grace of God, could be any of us. Soften our hearts, reach out a little bit more, understand that to whom much is given, much is required. So, Mr. Gilder, you said you lead the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. So what are effective strategies for breaking down the stigma and beginning to have conversations about mental health among black men and boys? And what can we do to move from those who attempt to self-medicate to get them into a cycle of care, medication, and treatment?
Congressman Carter, first of all, thank you for the question. Congresswoman Wilson, thank you for your leadership in creating the commission on social status of black boys and men. As I go to answer the question, I just wanted to start out by also thanking you for having these young people here today, because if you can see it, you can be it. And they could be any one of us here, and they could be any one of you. And it's so good to have them here to see this. To your staffs, thank you for all the hard work you do. As a collective, we want to say you're not alone. We want to make sure you know that we're here for you and with you. What you just spoke about in terms of the 1 in 3, we're a cosmetic society. We judge a book by its cover. And we got to get into the table of contents and the chapters. So we have to look at what we can do in terms of moving the needle from the standpoint of our judgment when we first see someone. And this also goes into something that we're doing right now at NAMI called the Community Health Equity Alliance. Community Health Equity Alliance is a program that we're doing in for the African American community and those with African ancestry to actually look at health alliance inside the community of who are all the assets that need to come together to help someone in the community that's living with serious mental illness navigate their care journey. What does that look like? What are the resources that they need to know? Because a lot of times that person that is living with serious mental illness does not know how to navigate their care journey. And this Community Health Equity Alliance initiative, Crisis Can't Wait is how we have named it, is something that we're doing in communities across the country to actually look at serious mental illness and those living with it and how to connect them to services.
Brother Boynes, I know historically African Americans, particularly women, have had some of the lowest suicide rates. Do you know why we see an uptick among the black community on African American men?
help young men understand that it's okay to raise your hand and ask for help. I mean, we've seen some celebrities, we've seen some athletes also kind of modeling the way and saying it's okay to ask for help. We also need to change a narrative that currently exists, and I'll share something with you. ACA recently published one of its journals. It's the Journal of Multicultural Counseling and Development, and that special issue focused on understanding the Black male experience through the lens of mental health. In that issue, the journal's editor-in-chief, Dr. Carla Atkinson Johnson, said this, I quote, "How we think about Black men is how we respond to them. The research has primarily focused on the absence instead of the presence of African American fathers, deficits versus achievements of Black male youth, and criminality instead of the strengths and overall wellness of Black men." End quote. So we have to shift that narrative because that's what's being put out there. And when young Black men don't see people who look like them in this profession, that also tends to convey a message that this is not a viable career option for people. And for the American Counseling Association, we know that Black men currently make up only 15% of mental health counselors. So we have some work to do to get people into the system to provide mental health services, especially now in this crisis. It is something that no one organization can solve alone. All of us here are connected, working together to try to come up with solutions, and along with your help as well, I think we can make some progress.
Along that line, you're the CEO of the largest association supporting licensed professional counselors. What solutions do you believe could help create parity for mental health counselors to support the growth of the workforce of Black mental health professionals, in addition to the bill that I just mentioned? Are there other things that we can be doing as members of Congress? And we'd love to tap your resource to help advance, particularly this legislation, other pieces of legislation that will get us closer to parity.
Thank you for that question, and ACA would be willing to help in any way necessary. We have advocates across the country and in the districts as well that would be willing to get behind that. I would validate what Dr. Eastry has already mentioned about the low-income payment programs. For counselors specifically, we did a recent workforce study, and what's happening is people are entering the profession with so much debt that their salaries aren't keeping up with that, so they're struggling to earn a living. We have counselors that are getting food stamps and working second jobs to work a profession that we know isn't easy, but they are committed to ensuring that people are well mentally. So we have got to do some work to kind of address the barriers to entry, which starts at, kind of the college level and all of the debt that people are assuming. So I think that would go really far in helping to move the needle in the right direction.
Thank you very much. And finally, before I relinquish the mic, Brother Devon, from your vantage point as a leader in the music and entertainment industry, one that undoubtedly has a significant amount of followers as an influencer, what can we do to help you particularly get to our younger people to express to them our sincere care and getting resources where they are, not expecting them to come where we are?
I think, one, we gotta go ground zero, we gotta go right to where they're being affected most. Prior to COVID, with my foundation, the Love Life Foundation, for example, the food deserts that are in Ward 7, Ward 8, Southeast, we work with Martha's Table, directly in different organizations, local farmers and whatnot, where we supply fresh fruits and vegetables. Like, we gotta go straight to the communities that are impacted the most. Part of the tour that I was just on during the day, we unload, we touch down and touch the city, but as an entertainer, as athletes, we can't just go to somebody's community and just make the money for the night and keep it moving. I think the impact needs to be invested back into the city. For example, we did women's empowerment luncheons, which allowed me to align with the local mayors and different investors and people in the cities. In Birmingham, Alabama in particular, I found out in Birmingham, Alabama in particular, 60% of the households are ran by women. 60% of the households. So it was just women in the household, Black women in particular, we're talking about. So
again, it's that, I think the messaging too for the youth is to understand instead of, social media can be utilized as a tool. So for the young brothers that's in here, if it's something that you wanna address in your community, use the social media as a tool. You at me, I'll repost you. If there's something that's going on in your city, in your ward, that you wanna speak out against, the gun violence, whatever whatever label they're trying to put on you, that you can overcome. I think that these things are very important. And then there's the conversation of the music, right? Which plays a major role. I'm a firm believer. It's the reason why you never heard me say certain things on the record, and you never hear me refer to women on the record the way some other artists do. I'm a firm believer in freedom of speech, but I also believe just as you are what you eat, you are what you ingest, you are what you listen to. So by the time you listen to a record 3-4 times, you're indoctrinated by it. So, I think that, these are other things that, that we can encourage, for the artists, the poets, utilize your voice, put it in, put that message, the messaging in the music. But again, it's about aligning and going, directly to the community, meeting with your local, we're talking about voting, it's not just about the presidential election, it's about your congressmen, your congresswomen, your local aldermans, all of these things matter in terms of building and funding and things that we need in the community.
And finally, you mentioned, I don't want to get deep into your personal stuff, but you mentioned that you didn't begin to deal with your issues until 40.
Oh yeah.
And if you could, again, without going into any specific detail, life before 40, life before getting treatment compared to what life has been since, talking about your issues.
Therapy is so important, I would encourage you, as a father, I encourage you to, my sons to have, therapy or having a safe space, and I think that's something that every parent in a position, whether there's free funding or what have you, I encourage it. Everybody should have a therapist. Everybody should have a safe space to go be able to talk about what's going on in their mind, what's going on in their lives. Whether you're talking about, so many challenges, sexual abuse, depression, thoughts of suicide, whatever the case may be, right? For me, what I realized with therapy is it gives you tools. They give you homework. You know what I mean? And what you realize is that when you're in the workspace, when you're dealing with relationships, when you're dealing with family members, you're dealing with business, you're able to apply those tools, forever. And ask, step outside of yourself and ask yourself, hey, what would the old Raheem do versus the new Raheem? So I definitely, I would encourage, for our young black men, our youth, it's nothing wrong with having a safe ear, unbiased ear to be able to talk it out, be able to talk it out, walk it out.
Thank you. And as I often say in audiences like this, and audiences anyway, quite frankly, if you walk into a room with 10 people, every one of them has something going on. Everyone, not 8 out of 10, not 9 out of 10, not 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10 has something going on in their lives that others may not be aware of. Don't be so quick to judge. Don't be so quick to persecute. And most importantly, don't be so quick to quit. Because we're all going through something. And whatever we were going through yesterday, we may have overcome today, but guess what? Something else may be looming in the wings. But you gotta have the confidence, the faith and strength to know that we're here and we care and there are solutions, and you are not. You will hear this theme throughout this conversation. You are not alone. Your issues are not so unique that somebody else hadn't had to deal with them. So I want you to recognize that we've had our illustrious United States Senator LaFonza Butler to join us, and we'll hear from her in a moment. Then as promised, I will now relinquish the mic to, and I am being told that this ultimate Southern gentleman is deferring to the illustrious Senator from California to introduce herself and answer questions. so much for being here, ma'am. And she has been an incredible leader long before coming to the United States Senate. She's been a stellar leader in our community and has a wealth of experience and talent and views to share with us. So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congressman Carter. It's so good to see a face. We talked during the pandemic and after and had never put a face to it. So I thank you for the introduction. Congressman Johnson, thank you for your generosity in time. And of course, Congresswoman Wilson, your leadership has just been outstanding. Leaders of my generation, I said to my team, I get 2 days of back-to-back Congresswoman Wilson. Yesterday the hat was pink. And the leadership that she provides, those of us who have followed behind her just is incredible. Thank you all for the work that you are doing, for the voice that you are providing, and for the leadership and commitment that you are showing to not just our young men as incredibly important as they are. They too have the opportunity to give voice and demonstrate leadership to our young women. And so it is, and I think, doubly impactful, the work that you all are doing, and the very presence of all of you is just another reminder of how bright the future of our country truly is. And so thank you for being willing to be here. I just had a couple of questions, and I apologize for being late. The Senate vote had just opened, and I wanted to make sure that I voted before I came over so I could spend time with all of you. I was appointed to the United States Senate about 6 months ago. And every day of those 6 months, I have been spending time talking with young leaders in my state of California, but also here in Washington, taking my team to the DC Dream Center and doing the kind of volunteer work in this city that we occupy, but also just directly engaging with young people. My daughter's school does work at Martha's Table, and this city truly has opened its arms to me. And I have tried to understand and really figure out how I can utilize this platform, the platform and the power of the United States Senate, and working with my colleagues, and how we strengthen the future of our democracy. There are those who believe that the future of our democracy will be determined in November. I believe it is being determined in high schools and colleges each and every day. Every single conversation that I have had has, the subject of mental health has emerged. Every single one, and it is not me bracing it. And on one hand, I celebrate the fact that this is a generation who is willing to talk about openly and ask for the help that they need. At the same time, I feel an immense responsibility to figure out what we can do right now to support our young men and our young leaders in what has been a tumultuous time in their lives. We are in commencement season, and appreciating that these who are graduating in the next few weeks are the very ones who missed graduation 4 years ago. That has been their experience, a global pandemic and division and all the other things. And so how do we help them now? In the Senate, I sit on the Judiciary Committee. We had a hearing on gun violence and its appropriate designation as a public health crisis. I wanted to begin my questioning, I only have three. I wanted to begin my questioning to you, Dr. Benjamin. I believe might be the best place to start, but you all tell me. But to you, Dr. Benjamin, given what we know about gun violence, given what we know about the trauma associated with witnessing, living through, being proximate to gun violence, can you talk a little bit about, we talked about the public health crisis as it related to our acute healthcare system. Can you talk about gun violence and the traumas therein as it relates to the mental health impacts and potential crisis that we may be experiencing in the future?
Yeah, you know, the challenge we have with guns is, that when someone gets injured with a firearm in the community, the whole community suffers. And we don't recognize that. We don't acknowledge the trauma that occurs, the fear when that happens. Suicide, tragically, is often more silent because it occurs, but it does occur within a family structure. So that family, those relatives, et cetera, they have the same reaction when a family member dies from suicide. There's always this feel of what did we miss? There's a stigma and a blame that occurs with that from the survivors, the survivor guilt. I'm sure some of my colleagues can talk more professionally about that. But you know, when we have a mass shooting or we have a homicide, we focus like a laser on those. But the truth of the matter is, almost 60% of these deaths are suicides. And let me just point out, Congresswoman Wilson said, you're about prevention. You're absolutely right. Firearm violence is largely preventable. That's the real tragedy here. And we have failed to take the moral authority to do it. Hopes and prayers are nice, but they don't solve the problem. And we know enough to get our hands around this. We know enough right now. Criminal background checks, red flag laws, getting firearms out of the hands of people who ought not have them because they're not either too young, they're too mentally not prepared for it. Responsible gun owners who know everything they're supposed to know, still there's a high percentage that don't lock up and secure their firearms. So we know what to do, we just have not had the political will to address it.
Thank you so much for that. I would love to, Mr. Boynes, come back to a comment that I heard you offer in response to a question from Congressman Carter relative to Workforce Tomorrow. I am testifying at the Senate Health Committee about the need for more culturally appropriate, diversified workforce in our healthcare system. I am going to be talking specifically about, in the space of mental health and maternal health. When you made the comment about lowering barriers to entry and student loan support, all of which I am in favor of and support, I find myself asking the question across many professional spectrums, and I would love to get your response and insight. Are our current professional spectrums, our scopes of practice, do they meet the need at the pace that we actually need to be supporting young people in our communities? It takes 9 years in some cases to get a significant certification, PhD, doctor, all the things. And I hear the urgency expressed in this panel that our young people don't have 9 years for us to get a degree. So I'd love to get your thoughts as a counseling professional and member of the professional community. Are there scopes of practice challenges, and is there direction that you would offer to members of Congress to work with the professional community to reimagine, to kind of help to get the supports accelerated that our young leaders need?
Thank you for the question, Senator Butler. That is an excellent question, and one that has been on my mind for sure, given the recent workforce study that we conducted, and the data is very telling. It does take time to get through the programs, and then there are barriers to licensure. There are barriers to certification, and it could take up to 9 years. And then there are internships that aren't paid think we have to be creative and innovative, and the CEOs of these organizations, we need to work together with our professional memberships and come up with solutions that may be a little bit unorthodox. You know, we need Congress's help in maybe investing in mental health training programs that look a little different than having that PhD from a university, and we're training people at the community level to be first points of contact in interacting with families and with young people. Also thinking about, you know, how are we expecting people to receive the care that they need? Telehealth is huge, right? So people may not want to go into someone's office. So how can we look at that landscape and come up with solutions that may not fit the paradigm of the way it's been done for hundreds of years, especially as it relates to medicine and as it relates to how mental health professionals have been trained previously. And that's one of our ruffles and feathers, but we need to push forward and do things differently if we expect to get different results.
Thank you so much. My last question, if it's okay, Mr. Smith, I'd like to direct to you. I appreciate so much you being here and sharing with everybody who's watching, let alone in this room, the experiences of a professional athlete. I think it means the world to young people who find their career aspiration as being where you have been. I know young men that I grew up with who's also aspired to be where you have been and have seen them carry the weight of the world and put everything into getting to that place because they felt so responsible for it. Those who needed them to get there, whether it was providing for their mom or paying back their grandmother or making sure their siblings got to college or, and so all that is poured into the pursuit of perfection. I wonder if there would be something that you would offer to us to, as I'm sure you also thought about, those who were relying on you to be successful and to get to where you are, the pressures associated with that, and how you, when you were able to manage those pressures of perfection, the expectations of everyone else, and your own mental health and well-being.
Yeah, for me, man, it was a dream come true to be able to be drafted in the first round to the Philadelphia Eagles. And you're rightfully so about having the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm the first one in my family to ever make it that far. And there's a lot of, kids, individuals who are looking to make it so they can buy their mama a house, so they can tell their uncle, hey, I can get you a car, or I can do those things for you. But one thing that I never really did, and the things that I had weighing on me, was I never really addressed my anxiety. I never really addressed my depression, and those things follow us, right? If you're not careful, anxiety and depression is just sitting there with you as you continue to make it further and further in life. So, to me, it is very important once you go into a barbaric sport like that, you go into fans, coaches, people who are dependent on you and the weight of the world on you. It's essential to have a team and to have your therapists, to have your nonprofits that you can go to, because some of the kids, they don't have the money to be able to get the help that they desire, right? You talked about single family households, right? Some mothers don't have the time or the means to be able to pay for the therapy, and I think that's where, the nonprofits, I think that's where the communities come in at, right? And I spoke about the healing circles because that's where it kind of starts. It starts with the kids opening up to people who they admire, right? They admire the athletes, they admire, the songwriters, the producers, the people that they see each and every day. You talk about social media, right? They see us on these platforms, right? But they need to understand that these platforms are showing us being perfect, right? They need to see our true selves, right? And that's how they can relate to us. And once they're able to relate to us, they'll see that the vulnerability piece is so key to their destiny and what they stand for.
Thank you so much. I yield back, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, ma'am. All very good questions, quite insightful. Thank you for your incredible leadership. Next, we will hear from Congressman Hank Johnson. Hank, give you a brief introduction.
Okay, thank you. First, let me say how much I appreciate our panelists for giving of their time to be here today. Each of you had, ongoing issues and responsibilities that you could be tending to right now, but you chose to come and spend some time with us on this very important subject. And so I want to thank you all for being here. I want to apologize for being late, but life in congressional office takes you off and brings you back, and it's not always at the time that everybody else is in place, but hey, I'm here now. And so I want to also thank Congresswoman Frederica Wilson for being the brain behind this initiative, the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. This is legislation that was passed in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and signed into law. And so, it's a commission to study and come up with solutions to issues affecting Black men and boys. That's so significant, such a significant accomplishment. I want to thank her for being the brainchild of it and pushing forward. I want to thank the chair, my colleague Troy Carter from Louisiana, for being here today and making sure that this program that deals with mental health is effective. I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you young men for being here. What school are y'all from? What's the name of it? Okay, all right. Appreciate y'all being here.
Got some Capitol Leaguers out there, I see. Just saying.
Purple out there. Destined for greatness, regardless of which way it goes. But I want to thank them for coming, taking up their time. I want to thank them for their attention today. And you are our future. I remember when I was running the streets of Washington, D.C. when I was y'all's age, staying out half the night, running with a group of guys that I'm still affiliated with today, but I was able to escape from Washington, D.C. and go to college in Atlanta, and that kind of saved me from the situation that unfolded for my buddies who weren't able to escape. I was fortunate to be raised by a single parent, basically. My daddy was in the house, but he was an alcoholic. He was dealing with deep-seated issues that he hadn't dealt with as a young man. And so it just came back to haunt him. It just got worse and worse and worse as an adult for him. And so he was in the household, but he was basically an impediment. But my mama, like your mama, Troy, had to be a mama and a daddy to raise a son. A mother raising a son is quite difficult. So my hat is off to my mother. I finally did make her proud in many ways, but I think when I arrived here in Washington, D.C., she lives with me in Atlanta now. It really, brought back for her a lot of memories and tough times that we went through. But I'm happy that I was able to make her proud. And I know that you all one day make your parents proud. Are there any of you who have envisioned yourself maybe sitting up here on this dais with being one of us one day? Has anybody thought about that? You? When I was riding the bus coming through here late at night, looking at the Capitol, I used to think of myself being here one day. I actually felt that, and boom, here I am. Same thing can happen to any one of you all thinking about it, but you need to prepare for it. And one of the things I'll tell you also is DC is a city, 10 square miles, about 800,000 residents in the District of Columbia. This city, your city, has more people in it than some states. And, but the fact is, I had to leave DC in order to become a full-fledged member of Congress with the right to vote. I had to leave DC because DC does not have, DC is like, it's like representation. You don't pay taxation, but no representation. So there's a movement, statehood, that is moving forward to make sure that DC can have at least one person in Congress who can vote, and also 2 United States senators with voting power. And so one of you all, or perhaps 3 of you all, might one day be one of those U.S. senators if we can get statehood for Washington, D.C. passed. So that's something that y'all might want to start looking at, getting involved in. Nothing better to get involved in some things that affect the greater good, more than just yourself, but the greater good. That's why I admire you gentlemen for being here today. Mr. Devon, you know, the Love Life Foundation, I'm thinking about this song that Tina Turner sung, What's Love Got to Do with It? What does love have to do with mental health for our black boys?
I think initially you can move through life, and then one day you can ask yourself, you know, how much do you love yourself, or how have you been loving on yourself? You know what I mean? So one of the things that I learned through therapy, one of my homework assignments initially was, hey, like, you know, you've been a provider for your family. You utilize your career to help everyone around you, but what have you done for yourself lately? Like, you know, what I think, you know, one of the biggest self-loving things you can do is to be able to recognize when you need to take a mental health day, you know, or to be able to say, to be okay with saying I'm not okay, you know, or to figure out something that, you know, how do you, treat yourself, treat yourself better. Nobody's gonna treat you better than you know. I think once you really get an understanding of what love is, self-love, it's easy to then go out and give that frequency, and get that energy to everything around you. You know, for me, love and the Love Life Foundation is about community. You know, edutainment, as I called it earlier. You know, being able to take the arts and culture and being able to find things that I want to impact, and then in a witty and a cool way, being able to deliver that message where it doesn't come off like corny, it's still catchy, it still has a good vibe to it. You will ride to it, you know. So that's very important for me as a songwriter, but also the self-love and saying like, hey, like, you know, to say, hey, like, making a conscious decision in my career long ago to say that I'm not gonna refer to women a certain way in a record. You know, this is like, we're actually, you find yourself drawing a line in the sand in that aspect. But as far as the Love Life Foundation, we've been established since right around 2011, 2012. We do everything from, have been involved in food banks, you know, Ward 7, Ward 8. We work with Jasmine Crow,
Black Celebrities Giving out of Atlanta. Did one of the biggest givings into the community, you know, for those that are displaced, over at the shelter off of New York Avenue over there, working with brothers like Tony Lewis Jr. And myself and DJ Quicksilver. We also do what's known as the Queen for a Day Spa takeovers, supporting women who transition out of severe domestic violence situations. So, I mean, it's a number of things. You know, when you talk about what's going on in the Black community, it's a lot to tackle at times. But it's also the gentle reminder that, you know, no matter what's going on, there's always going to be something going on. Like Congressman Carter says, you know, days like this and going out and doing the work, it's a gentle reminder that the world is still a beautiful place, right? In spite of what's going on, and that love is the highest frequency we can operate on, you know.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Evans, love of self or the lack thereof, what bearing does that have on one's mental health and one's ability to relate to their fellow human being?
Well, it has a lot to do with that. I think, you know, as a clinician, I've been a clinician, I've been an administrator in programs, I've been on the policy side for most of my career, funding programs. And I can tell you, the training that mental health professionals get is really important. When you ask people what really helped them in treatment, they usually don't talk about the techniques we learn. What they will say is, you call me mister, you showed me respect, you indicated that you cared about me. And so I think even as we're talking about what we need to do for Black men's mental health and changing systems, and I'm a big believer that there are a lot of things we could talk all day about how systems need to change. At the end of the day, people need to feel like there are people who care about them, that life is worth living, that people are going to support them, and we have to make sure that that gets embedded in the way we treat people. And without that, it is hard to recover. Without that, it's hard to get the kind of wellness that I've heard people talk about, which should be our goal as a mental health community.
Mr. Gillison, I feel like you want to add something to that.
Congressman Johnson, first of all, I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I went to college in Louisiana. And some of my contemporaries that grew up in Southeast didn't make it. I did. This is so important to me. I'll talk about love in a second, but I also want to talk about what Congressman Carter said about You Are Not Alone. I lost my contemporary who I grew up with right here in D.C., not too far from here, to suicide. So what you all are doing means so very much to me, because when I lost her, I also lost my aunt and uncle because of the ripple effect. And it's now 2024. She passed in 86, we've never talked about it, so thank you. This is important to be a professional person. Talk about love. National Alliance of Mental Illness is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the United States with over 650 affiliates and 49 state chapters. We start with love, with the DNA in the communities across the country. Many of our people that do the work, they're volunteers. They are volunteers. 60% of our people that do the work in the communities are volunteers who would turn their pain into purpose and purpose into passion, starting with love. They do it with love. But what Dr. Evans just said, you know, it doesn't matter how much you know from the standpoint. You can know a lot, but people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. So what we need, and this is so good from a community aspect, because we all care. You can feel it. And that's what you want to feel when you're navigating something in terms of mental illness. You want to feel that that person that is treating you, that is seeing you, first of all, sees you, that you're not invisible to them, that they're not minimizing you, they're maximizing you, and they care. And that's what this is about, and that's what Raheem is talking about in terms of love. So love is critically important, and that's who NAMI is in terms of what we do every day on the ground in the communities across the U.S. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Street.
Thank you. And so the concept of love is something that is in the DNA and the fabric of social work. So we start with what the person is. So we start with them in their environment, really understand understanding what that looks like. I really appreciate you bringing up this concept of love in general, because I don't think that when we talk about Black men's mental health or mental health in general, we talk about enough about the concept of Black love or Black joy. So being out there talking about, I love you, I care about you, you mean something to me, is a huge point and a starting block for any aspect of how we're going to heal the community. And so for me, being a practitioner and now in this role as CEO, I'm able to communicate and show, you know, young Black men, my nephews, my son, everybody that looks up to me, that there is this space of love and that it's okay for us to have feelings. I think the other part of it too is really understanding that we have not done a good job, and we're getting better at it, at giving people the language of love. Telling people or showing people how they communicate their emotions, how they communicate and effectuate change in their relationships. When we talk a lot about social media and really being our true selves, we see a lot of situations between young people that start on social media and spill into their life. And it's really this ongoing kind of lack of language to say how they're really feeling, and it shows up in our community. So I think when we talk about love, when we talk about feelings and emotion, it really does create a primer for the behavioral workforce to really think about creative ways to have these conversations, to create safe space to have these conversations, and really allow for Black men and boys to be vulnerable and express their emotions to include love.
Thank you. Mr. Benjamin, what do you think?
You know, feeling wanted, needed, it's all about resilience. Places where, and people who feel that, you know, people care about them, have a strength that propels them to be able to achieve, to survive and to deal with all kinds of hardship. If you can build that into a community, then you get an extraordinary resilience in communities. Now, interestingly enough, communities of color have had that resilience for years. But it does take work. It doesn't happen inherent. It requires engagement of civic leaders, people of good faith, people of goodwill to want to make that happen. And so we express that in many ways, and love is clearly one way we express that.
Thank you, Mr. Boyne.
I can't say that I have much to add with what's already been said, other than I think this profession, I don't think anyone can step into this profession without having a love for people and having compassion and being able to see people as human beings. And I mentioned the narrative that is out there about how people view Black males. We have to change that. I think it starts with love. I think it starts with seeing people that may need help and being willing to step in and fill the gap that may not exist in their local communities. And all of that has to be rooted in love.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I were not to ask Mr. Smith, as a football player, retired, football doesn't seem to have anything to do with love. But is there something that you can add to this?
Other than the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, I think, you know, the love of the game and us being, when it comes to the game, being a part of the game and giving our life to it, I feel like when it comes to football, that's how you look at it. But I want to kind of go to, when you talk about love, you know, how can we know how to love a person if we don't even know how to love ourselves, right? And loving yourself starts with the home, right? So I'm a father of two. So it's important for me to tell my son that I love him, right? I need him to know that it's normal for me to say that. And by me speaking like that, he can go out into the world and understand what love looks like, because he sees me operate and do that to him. But then also, you talked about, I know we talked about single family households. Now, I grew up in a single family household too as well. Like, well, my dad was always in my life, but I live with my mom.
So she did a lot of the things, and it was a struggle. So I made a point, even with me being married with my wife or my kids, to see us as a power couple, as someone that is influential in their life, and then it also helps them understand what a true meaning of love is too, because they see us every day.
Thank you. We love y'all. You young men, we love y'all. Thank y'all for showing your love to these young men. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. And it's important to note that love doesn't have to come from someone you know. Love doesn't have to just come from your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your friends. We love you. And it's okay. And we love you, and there's a damn thing you can do about it. We're gonna keep loving you. And in the theme of making sure that we don't violate the very basic principle that we live by, and that is nothing about us without us. So with that, our illustrious leader, Congresswoman Wilson, is going to call on our young people to let us hear their voices.
First of all, let me thank everyone for coming today. All of our analysts, our CEOs, members of Congress, and all of our audience. Thank you so much, and our young men. Now, people look at me and they say, why does Congresswoman Wilson care so much about black men and boys? She is a woman. Why is she so focused on black men and boys? Well, let me tell you this. I was a school principal. And as a school principal, I had a school that was 1/3 African American, 1/3 Hispanic, and 1/3 Anglo. And every day I would have to go to school early to hug all of the little black boys that would bust into my school for integration purposes, because they were bad as hell. And in comparison to the other children, there was something missing. So I took them on as a project, and that is a path that I have been on for all of my life. And the little girls used to say to me, Miss Wilson, you're always doing something for the boys. When are you gonna do something for the girls? And I used to look at them and I would say, you may think this is for the boys, but this is for you. I am making you good husbands and good fathers for your children. So what they say now is, Miss Wilson, my boyfriend is in the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project. The 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project is a mentoring program that I put in place almost 40 years ago with all of the men across the state of Florida to mentor, lift up, and guide black boys on a carefully charted course to manhood. And that is what has been happening. And you know who I work the closest with? The police. The police. Because I don't want them to shoot my boys, because there's this tension that exists between black men and the police, and it has existed since slavery. So with that, I'm going to ask the young men here, because I have little boys like you all across Florida that know that if there's no one else in America that loves them, that Congresswoman Wilson loves them, and she goes the extra mile for them every day. I have sent more black boys to college than most celebrities, athletes, and even Oprah Winfrey. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask all of these wonderful CEOs and knowledgeable people about mental health, about life, or anything else? Stand up now or forever hold you. Stand up. Any questions? All right. That's the tax question. mic so everybody can hear you.
I just wanted to say thank y'all for all the advice that y'all gave us as young black teens about life and depression and anxiety, and I really appreciate y'all on that, especially coming out of DC because it was hard to do certain things now.
Come on over to the mic.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Keys. I am a member of the Fort Washington, Maryland Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Corporate Mentoring Program. And my question is, in what ways can schools and communities work together to create a supportive environment that promotes mental wellness and resilience among black men and boys?
I'll give you a quick answer to that. It begins with you. What you just did, and what you all done by being here, is the best step toward it, because no one can tell your story better than you. Your story is as unique as your fingerprint. The way you present it, the strength, the courage that you demonstrate being here gives us all great hope that the future is very bright. So we'll continue to learn from what you've asked and what you've done and what we've talked about today, but know this, your presence makes a difference, and we're encouraged because of it.
Question, what school you go to?
I go to Friendship Tech Prep.
What grade you in? Okay, so, what's some of the challenges in your, what's some of the challenges in school, what's some of the challenges in your life that you feel like, or amongst your peers that you feel like would be helpful?
I feel like we sometimes have problems understanding each other, and we all go through, and we're all different.
Okay, so you're an organizer within yourself. Like, I'm pretty sure you have some other peers that feel the same way, go to school with. I would say maybe try to set up a meeting with your principal, with your administrator, maybe start with your guidance counselor in the school, form an alliance, and start there, and maybe come up with amongst you and your peers, your students, your friends, put a list together of some of the things that y'all want to, that you feel like you need assistance on, that you might need guidance on, and then take it to the principal, take it to the administrators, and then also like, again, it's a gentle reminder, like it's a powerful tool, you know what I mean? A lot of times we use it for entertainment and to see what's going on, what rap beef, who's winning Kendrick Drake rap beef right now. You know what I mean? But it's also a tool. It's a way to communicate. It's a way to advocate for yourself. It's a way to change things. You know what I mean? And it's a way to spark a conversation, what we call an algorithm.
The time has been far spent. We're going to be called to the vote shortly. I don't want to short circuit the whole reason we're here. Any other questions from any of you guys? Because we want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity for your voice to be heard. Yes, sir. Two more. Come on.
My name is Keith Gordon Jr. I just have two questions if you don't mind.
Not at all.
My first question is, what advice would you have for people that's struggling with anxiety and depression? Because I know people who are actually struggling with depression, and I make sure that every day that they know that I make sure every day they know they have somebody to talk to and they're not alone. So what advice would you have for them?
Could I ask one of the panelist experts so we can maximize the time? One of you choose to answer that question for the young man?
I'll speak to you after this, but I would tell them to reach out to NAMI.org. We have a resource line, and we have a youth and young adult helpline, resource line for young people to speak to someone to find out about the resources to address anxiety and depression and to help them with that. So.
No, you had two questions.
I would just add, your school should have school counselors that could, or school counselors, or school psychologists who could help. Treatment of anxiety is very effective, and if you have a colleague, a friend who has anxiety, I would really encourage you to get them connected to a mental health professional, you can treat that. But the other thing is, you being a good friend is very important. And for anyone who's having any kind of mental health problem, one of the biggest things that is really effective for people is having social support people around them that can support them. So being there is going to be important as well.
And remember, 988. 988. You can dial that right now. Someone's gonna answer. You can talk about any concerns, any needs, any hopes, any dreams, any fears, and someone will be there to listen, help, and direct you to other resources. You have 2 questions.
My second question is, so this is my last year in high school. I'm graduating May 23rd. I want to ask if you have any advice. Because I plan on majoring in sports medicine, but I'm also see if I can take a minor in real estate. And I plan to go to college at North Carolina Central University. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice for me for the future.
Oh, I was gonna let you respond.
Well, one of the things that, well, he asked about career. One of the things that you can do is you can come in and apply for one of our scholarships to come and work with the CBC. The CBCF, CBCI, CBC, that has scholarships for young people like you that are getting ready to go to college, to create tutelage and opportunity, and to open up and show you a whole other world. In addition to sports medicine and real estate, take advantage of us. We're not just faces on television, we're not just something so far away. You've heard from us, we have our personal experiences. There's anything special about us other than somebody prayed for us and gave us a hand. And we were able to succeed in often cases against the odds. Why do I say that? Because I want you to know we can do it, you can do it. So take advantage of that. I've got my staff here, they'll share some information with you on internship opportunities, scholarship opportunities, things that you can do that will further foster your hopes and dreams and maybe even broaden your horizons to maybe one day want to be a member of Congress or a member of the Senate or President of the United States or Supreme Court Justice. All of that is within your sweet spot.
Okay, see the gentleman standing there with the camera? Before you leave, you give him your phone number, your name, so that we can reach out to you and tell you how to get a scholarship and how to move forward in life. The question you ask is what we do.
Fantastic. Amen. Thank you. There was another question.
Somebody else up there.
Okay, to keep it quick, my name is Rion Cunningham, and I'm a student at Tech Prep, and I'm also a part of the Capital League program in our school. And my question is, what specific strategies or programs have been effective in supporting the mental health needs of Black men and boys, especially in the high school setting?
Yes, thank you for your question. What's your name again?
Ariana Cunningham.
Ariana Cunningham. Thank you for your question. So there are, each school should be staffed with a mental health counselor and or social worker that can help with addressing mental health. So some of the challenges that your colleague had talked about in terms of communication, there are schools, there are programs and there are clinicians that are assigned to those schools that are able to help to communicate and really address those. One of the things that we have been really focused on is how do we increase that for our Black women and youth in schools, and how do we get more workforce in those environments so we can address those issues that are experienced, right? We're now seeing that more youth are talking about their emotions, they're wanting more in terms of communication and effective conflict resolution. And so being ready to address that and to support that with resources is something that we have to work on. But currently, your school should have those types of services. They're not just reach out to us and we can help them find those services.
If we have any more youth, you can ask your question, but I wanted to ask a question about the criminalization of mental health. So many people, we have a lot of people with mental health crises and they call the police and then the next thing you know, they have a criminal record, somebody gets shot. I mean, who can help us understand what we can do as members of Congress to help with this crisis in our organization.
I would say, you know, I think when you become a police officer, you have to go to academy.
No, I'm not talking about the police, I'm talking about what can we do as members of Congress to help these organizations to help change what we see, because the police is a whole different issue.
I kind of touched on it earlier. When the call goes out, in some cases, it's been family members who call, thinking that they're calling for help, and you know, it turns into a tragic situation. So what I'm saying is, like, you know, it's one of those things where maybe there's some training that needs to happen aligned with officers, maybe starting at the academy. I don't know if that's above our pay grade or you know what I mean? Like
you have a bill.
So you know, I think it starts there with the academy in terms of training and understanding, and to be able to recognize when you're dealing with somebody who's in a crisis as a you know, family member. You know, there was a period with my dad where I could know, like, literally through the phone or do a conversation and say, okay, something's off. He's off his meds. I need to stop what I'm doing. I need to go Cleveland, Ohio. I need to get in touch with a family member, you know, that is on the ground, and to do a wellness check, you know, and that type of thing. You know, and something has to change. I don't know the statistics, but I mean, it's a lot. Like, a lot of times, you know, these officers are going to a situation and you're dealing with somebody that's not crazy, you know, that's not on drugs, you know, and if they are, they might be masking, you know, for the mental health, and you just can't go into a situation with just guns blazing. You know what I mean? So again, for me, you know, my dad was living, that was one of my biggest fears. My dad would be off his meds and, you know, be displaced or end up missing again, and, you know, be a victim of that situation. So again, I think it's being able to identify, you know, that it is a mental health situation. You know, it's a lot to unpack and a lot to unload. But I think definitely some type of mental health class, maybe, you know. Again, I'm not a police officer and I haven't been in the academy, so I don't know if that even is a conversation piece to be had. But you know, it's definitely another reason why I'm here today.
Yeah, I would add, I think there are three big things that we have to do. One is, if you look at the criminal justice system, there's something called the sequential intercept model, which looks at all of the stages that people go through in the criminal justice system. And what we can do is embed mental health professionals at each one of those phases, from when people are first arrested all the way through to the back end. That's been pretty effective at trying to divert people out of that system at whatever stage they are in that model. With that, one of the things that requires is flexible funding that allows mental health systems and community systems to fund those services, because they're not necessarily psychotherapy. And because of that, you need a different kind of funding mechanism. The second thing is a bigger problem, a more complicated problem, which is to have services on demand in communities so that people don't get into the criminal justice system. And the third thing is something that people have talked about, which is how do we ensure that there is the ability within the community for people to recognize when people are having problems early on. It's a big problem. When I was a mental health commissioner, one of the things I did as commissioner is to fund people getting training in churches and schools and all kinds of places, because what happens is those issues that get people into the criminal justice system, we start to emerge usually in the late teens, early 20s, and they progressively get worse. Because no one is recognizing it as a mental health problem, they recognize a behavioral problem, they recognize it's other things. Those people end up escalating to the point that they often get arrested. And so we have to have strategies that allow people in the community to recognize when people are having problems, know how to connect people to services. There's a great program called Mental Health First Aid, which I'm a big proponent of. It's a one-day training, and it really prepares just lay people with enough information so they know how to help people get connected before they escalate and end up in the criminal justice system.
Something else I wanted to bring up was the stigma. You all could talk about how mental health is stigmatized in the Black community. And how can we break through that so people feel comfortable in admitting that we need to applaud these children for coming up saying, they were clear. But there's so many Black men who are dealing with issues that, what do you think?
I think there's actually some really good news about that. When I came in the field, late 80s, people didn't talk about mental health. And people in the Black community especially didn't talk about mental health. That has changed a lot. Virtually the people you see on this panel. In particular, young people are more willing to talk. But what I have found as a mental health commissioner is that when you create opportunities for people to talk about mental health issues in a normalized way, in a non-stigmatized way, people want to have the conversation. For example, one of the things that we did when I was a commissioner was storytelling events where Black men would talk about their journey. So we would have a star, like my friend here, along with just general people in the community. And the really interesting thing about that was that we reframed. We didn't talk about mental illness. We talked about mental strength and what did men have to do for their mental strength. That framing and that kind of format, hundreds of people would come to those events. And not only would they come to the events and listen to the men telling their stories, but they would also then engage after those events. And I'm using that as an illustration that if we want to solve these problems, we have to be able to innovate. We have to change the models that we have typically used. If we would have said, well, we want to have a discussion about mental health, maybe people would have showed up. But when you reframe it and put it in a different format, people will come. So I think that those kind of things, having people with celebrity, being willing to talk about it, doing the mental health first aid training that I talked about earlier, those kind of things begin to normalize and allow people to talk about these issues in a way that is not sort of the typical stigmatized way that we talk about it.
I want to build on that. We have created a NAMI Next Gen, next generation of young adults that are working with us to be the new voice and to actually help us work and navigate talking about stigma and talking about it in a positive way. The other thing that we've done is we have an ambassador program. Marcus is one of those ambassadors. We have a few others in the room, and if you think about it, if you have a first round draft choice that's also all of a sudden talking about mental health versus talking about getting a first down or making a great interception or a tackle or something like that. We have a number of celebrities that are involved with us from an ambassador program that are telling their story, and it's helping change the narrative. So we're trying to use different platforms. We were gifted with something from Apple. If you take Siri and you say, I'm feeling depressed, it will say, I'm sorry to hear that. I can connect you with a friend or a family member, or I will connect you with NAMI.org. So we're also using social media in a positive way, but we're trying to use multiple platforms, and we're really trying to use the voice of who we see in the media. Because if we can use the media in the right way, it will really help scale the positive conversation about stigma. Going back to, you asked about funding legislation. There's something called crisis intervention teams, and I know that we have 988, but I will tell you that the crisis intervention teams, Congressman Wilson, is a program that started in Memphis, Tennessee. It's 4 police commands, it's 40 hours of training. Police chiefs have to take their officers off the street for 40 hours, and that becomes the challenge. If they have the funding, and many commands have found the funding, but the more they have the funding, the better they can do with that training. And what this is officers who decide that they want to learn how to address a crisis with an individual in a positive and proactive way. Last but not least is early intervention. Getting help early is one of the pillars of our strategic plan, and we look at it from the standpoint of our community. Let's get to early intervention, and almost to what Dr. Evans said about sequential intercept map and what that looks like. So we want to get to the young people as soon as possible. And the last thing is that what you've done so far in terms of the bills that you have, the Loan Act, which would increase the Pell Grant awards and make crucial reforms for the public service loan forgiveness. McBath's Train Act, Congresswoman McBath's Train Act, and Representative Carter's Mental Health Workforce Act that he referenced. And last but not least, the Mental Health Transparency Act. This is all legislation that we support, fully support, and we've offered to you that this crisis intervention training and a few other things that we talked about, we would support those as well. We want to make sure that you know that we're here to support.
And if you can share that with us, we will use our voices and our platforms to help amplify all of the programs, the one that Dr. Evans mentioned, when you mentioned the others that are out there, because people don't know. And as much as we amplify, people still don't know. So we will use our voices with our individual congressional offices to promote that. I want to take a moment of personal privilege to just recognize someone in the audience. We did a program with my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, in case you guys are wondering which fraternity, that dealt with mental health during ALC. We were fortunate enough to have Brother Brandon Coleman, who's in the audience, is a former New Orleans Saints player. Stand up, let him see you, brother, please. Who came and participated with us. He has a company called SoulCo, an organization called SoulCo. So we have noted athletes and professionals who happen to be African Americans who are telling their stories. And so we want to continue to give as many platforms. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for telling your story and being a part of the solution. And thank all of you. I think we're going to be being called to vote shortly. I want to thank all the people in the audience as well, because you took time to be here. For our corporate sponsors, those of you who write checks and sit in C-suites and talk to corporate leaders who participate and sponsor and underwrite activities for us, we can't say thank you enough to you. We ask that you continue in those boardrooms to talk about how your corporate dollars can help facilitate meaningful discussions like this while we in Congress continue to fight for funding and policy and bills like the George Floyd Policing Act that Congresswoman Wilson mentioned, what the young man asked about, what someone asked about dealing with the police and making sure that there's adequate training and sensitivity training as a part of their academy experience so they'll know how to de-escalate. They'll know how to identify and look for the signs of people who may be troubled and not necessarily criminals. And there is a distinction that we have to call. We've seen so many cases where mom or grandmother call the police officer because Junior's acting up, and then when the police gets there, they shoot him. And that wasn't the help we were asking for, obviously. So I want to personally thank you all, and I want to end as I began by giving a huge thank you to our leader, our founder of the Commission of Black Men and Boys, the status of social status of Black men and boys, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Join me in giving her another. Because of her commitment, her tenacity, that we sit here today, that we do the things that we do, and we will all recommit ourselves to do it even more. Now, everyone in this room and everyone under the sound of my voice has been duly deputized to go out and do the work. And now I'm going to relinquish the floor as I thank you all, and I end my service and I will turn it over to the leader, the outstanding Frederica Wilson. Ma'am, for your closing comments.
Representative Carter, what I want you to know is earlier today, I had a conversation with all of our witnesses, and they have committed that they can travel to our respective districts, and I did say Louisiana. Called it out, called out Atlanta, called out Miami, called out New York, and they are committed to come and do this with our local communities, whether it's the capitals, whether it's the county commission, and we'll come up with a schedule, but they're gonna partner with the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys and Mental Health.
I think Louisiana is next on the stop. All right, we got it. That's right, Louisiana, we're gonna
Got it,
make
we love it, okay?
So thank you all for being here again. Thank you to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, all of the panelists. As you might have noticed, members had to come and go. There are a lot of committee meetings going on. It is not because of lack of interest, but because there are multiple tags on their time. And for those of you who have sat through this the whole time, and most importantly, tried panel of experts,